There's a lot of dodgy brother real estate agents in Australia still. Property management is the same. Everyone knows what everyone charges, but they continue to charge cheap because they can't provide the same level of service. You know, you do not want to base your decision on a cup of coffee. You could get the best agency out there that could lease your property 10 days quicker. You know, that's potentially $700 extra income in your pocket a year. And 1% in a home loan is thousands and thousands of dollars a year. 1% in property management is a couple of bucks. It's really important to pick the right agency. You know, don't go for the cheapest agency either. Make sure that you've got one that's trained, continually trained and up to date on systems. Landlords need to understand, as much as, you know, tenants are a protected species, that means it's more important to have the right agency working for you.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how and where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You will hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Hi, freedom fighters. If you've listened to the recent Get Invested focus on property management, you'll already appreciate just how critical property management is to your success as a long-term property investor. But as I stressed last week, I don't want you to just take my word for it, because it's more important that you continue to hear it from an industry-leading professional. So this week we continue with the concluding part 2 of my interview with Deniz Yusuf, a proven industry professional who has achieved great things himself and is now an inspirational property management trainer and coach through his Inspired Growth training and BDM coaching programs. Deniz is an internationally recognised consultant who now coaches, trains, mentors and keynote presents to property managers and agents across Australia, New Zealand and the United States. And unlike many experts with a long academic pedigree, Deniz earned his stripes on the ground. His property management expertise was gained over years getting his hands dirty in the trenches of rental properties, where he successfully listed 925 new property managements from an astonishing 1,077 presentations in under 4 years, which is a staggering 86% strike rate based on his advanced skills and his unique approach. Deniz now strives at assessing property management teams and finding the blockage in an office that may be stopping them from achieving their goals. And after it's fixed, it's then about continued consulting and mentoring so they can become the best in their field. Now, the impressive lineup of clients that Deniz has consulted with and presented to include the largest conferences in Australasia, including realestate.com.au, the McGrath Group, First National, LJ Hooker, Harcourts, and the Real Estate Institutes of Victoria, Queensland, South Australia and Western Australia, as well as keynote presentations to leading property management forums in the United States and many more. Now, Deniz and his partners in crime train well over 200 real estate officers globally through their Inspired Growth Training Inner Circle membership platform. His focus is now helping property management officers to grow their businesses by creating superior client experiences and mentoring property managers to become market leaders in their area. So as you can already hear, Deniz has a wealth of expertise and a proven track record in the challenging world of property management. So in the concluding part 2 of our great discussion today, Deniz reveals his best tips and tricks when it comes to selecting a property manager and ensuring your property is best protected, including what are the keys to successful property management, what differentiates a good property manager from an average one, what should property investors look for when they select a property manager, what are some of the tough love things that property managers need to say to landlords, plus a bunch of other property management gold. And if you like what you hear and you want to find out more about Dennis and the IGT team, jump on inspiredgrowthtraining.com. And if you want to hear more from Dennis, along with all of Australia's leading property investors and independent professionals, join me and the other 120,000 plus regular listeners every week as I anchor host the country's most popular and longest running property show, Kevin Turner's Realty Talk. So I look forward to seeing you on channels.realty.com.au/Realty Talk, where we share short and sharp take-home tips and tricks on all things property. And while you're there, make sure you don't miss an episode of Realty Talk by signing up on the realty.com.au homepage so that you can get every show and all of the leading property insights in your inbox every week. And if you want to start or continue investing in your knowledge, join me and many other like-minded investors in our growing Get Invested community right now. We send you a free and exclusive monthly email full of practical self, health and wealth wisdom that our current Freedom Fighter subscribers can't wait to get their hands on every month. It's full of investment and lifestyle tips, my personal book recommendations, apps I use to enhance life, and a whole bunch more. Just visit bushymartin.com.au and sign up at the bottom of the page, because this is just the beginning. Or if you'd prefer an hour of power to talk with me personally on all questions, queries or issues that you'd like to discuss about your investment strategy, your finance or your property portfolio delivery, just jump on knowhowproperty.com.au, hit the purple book appointment button in the top right hand corner, then click on the Let's Zoom Deep Dive Meeting with Bushy's 1 hour option to book in your preferred time, and for the princely sum of $295, you can ask me anything you want for a full 60 minutes. In the meantime, enjoy this concluding part 2 of my great conversation with Deniz Yusuf. I think the biggest thing for us, because in our own experience, Sonia and I had a number of properties, and we were so disappointed and disillusioned with the lack of quality of property management at that time, and that we're talking back in the 90s, that we felt that we could do it better ourselves, and that's where Sonia sort of built slightly biased, Dennis, but built a very strong and high reputation property management business on the strength of that. And the thing that sort of I took away was that the fact that you don't know, a lot of investors that they're trying to do it themselves don't even know the risks that they're running. And it's such a legal area now, and it's the legislation now is so much orientated towards protecting the tenant that the landlord can be stepping on landmines without even knowing they're doing it if they don't have a professional like an experienced property manager doing it for them. What's your views on that?
Oh, it's so true, and that's why Australia does lead the way in property management globally. You know, we joke about Australia's got, the wombat, the kangaroo, the platypus, the koala, and they're all protected species. Well, the tenant should be on the same list, because they are a protected species. We are the most legislated country in the world, and Western Australia is the most legislated in Australia. So you've got no choice but to be good. There's a lot of dodgy brother real estate agents in Australia still. Some still taking photos, putting on a bit of paper on the front window display, would you believe? Handing out keys to tenants. But we are so legislated, we are so strict. The standard of property management, self-managed owners in Australia on average is about 18%. In the US, Texas alone, 82% are self-managed. It's the reverse. New Zealand is about 50%. UK is a market that we're just getting into. I'm not quite sure on the percentage, but it's still highly self-managed, or they will find you a tenant and you look after the property. So the legislation here is very strong, so which is a good thing. Landlords need to understand, as much as tenants are a protected species, that means it's more important to have the right agency working for you.
Absolutely, and I'd 100% endorse what you're saying there, Dennis. We've got some property in the US, and we mistakenly assumed before we went to the US that the US would be the pinnacle of everything property, and it really surprised us at just how far behind they are in the context of our experience here in Australia. So there's no question in my mind that Australia really does lead the fray when it comes to the quality of property management that we get to enjoy in this country. But what are the reasons and the barriers you think that those, and I was interested in that number, 18%. I thought it would have been more than that, but why those landlords don't engage property managers? What's your view, and how can we overcome that to get them to see the light?
Yeah, I think so. In WA, the percentage is a lot higher. So there's a lot more self-managed people over there because of the the mining sector over there. People could buy a house and you'd get a high rent because there was a massive demand for people going over. But as the good old iron ore and mining dropped down because of free trade agreements changed, etc. And people's rents were going backwards, a lot of the private owners had to go to an agency. So the big factor is the strict tenancy guidelines. Tenants know their rights, and if anyone thinks that you can just put a tenant in there and they're going to pay the rent, that's not the case. I hear horror stories, and thankfully a lot of them have been learnt. Australian media is really good at showcasing bad owners, so that it does push people to use managements as well. Yeah. The Australian government does a great job of protecting us through home loans, as you would know.
Yeah.
We are, there's really good legislation that protects our loans, so the banks can't just shut shop.
Yeah. And
we lose out. We are protected very well. The real estate sector is protected very well as well. COVID, when it first started, 60% of the news was about real estate.
Yeah.
Australia is very real estate orientated, very real estate orientated, and more people are being learnt that. When we were younger, we were taught it was all about buying a house, buying a car, getting a boat, buying another house. That's how we were brought up. I just didn't buy the car and the car and the boat. I went straight to buying another house, driving a ute. There's that middle ground where lifestyles marketing started coming into place. More people started buying the bigger cars, the bigger houses, and not getting investments. And, we hear about the rich getting richer. It's because it's our generation that continues to buy more property while the generation under us aren't being as educated as much. They're not focusing on investments because they don't worry about tomorrow as much as what we did.
Yeah, absolutely spot on there, mate. So if we, circling back on that property management subject, what are the keys to successful property management, do you think?
A property manager that is willing to adapt and do continued training is utmost important. It's an interesting thing that the characteristics of a property manager are the same as a policeman, policewoman, police person. You're dealing with a good property manager is capable of dealing with somebody that's new to the industry, has got the patience to help people and is adaptable to change as technology changes and brings it in, adapts it, and can also deal with a business person because anyone that owns an investment property is a business person.
Yeah.
So always make sure that if you're going to look at using, don't just look to the brands. Just because their door is a particular colour doesn't mean they are the best. They've got great branding, but it doesn't mean they've got the right systems. So I'd be interviewing them and making sure that they've got procedures in place against the warnings about bad tenants and that they are in continued training.
Yeah, very well said. And you made a really good comment there around the colour of the door and the brands, because I've always said to investors myself, excusing my French, I couldn't give a shit about the franchise name. It's the quality of the people that are going to be, what's their experience, what's their understanding, that's going to make or break how good they manage your property. And talking about that, I wouldn't mind your thoughts on, because I guess I've got a slight bias here. I've got to be honest, Dennis, around sales-based offices that have a property management team on the side, who are often the sort of forgotten and tolerated evil, and are therefore under-resourced and under-supported. What's your view around that from a landlord perspective? If you're looking for a property manager, what sort of an agency do you need to be looking for?
Well, it shouldn't matter if there is a sales division or a property management only, company. It's meant to be, it shouldn't matter, I'm saying, right? So I'm not saying that it's always the best. There are some brilliant sales and property management businesses going around where the business owner is focused on the success of property management. I don't know what the exact figure is, but roughly a real estate office's value is roughly around 70 to 75% of the income that the property management brings in. So some of those agencies that recognise that property management is important, they do focus on that.
Yeah.
So they do well. If you're interested in long-term longevity of investments and you're not interested in selling, then go for a property management only business, because they're not going to be calling you saying, hey, would you like us to get you an updated sale opinion of the property you may consider selling, because they are in the same bed. But a good sales agent, even if you're with a property management only, someone sold it to you, that person is still going to call you and ask those questions if they are a successfully driven, continued, trained, agent. I mean, if they were under my training, they'd be calling you 3 times a year still.
Yeah.
So, really, again, you are right, Bushy. Property management is known as that industry, the department that's thrown at the back end. But my job is to make sure and highlight that property management isn't the baby brother down the back of the corner, that we are, if not more important than the sales division.
Yeah, it's spot on. And you made a good comment there. The value of the business revolves around the rent roll, which the individual sales guys don't get that, but definitely the principals, if they've got their head screwed on right, will appreciate the penance for that. So sort of moving into that then, what do you think differentiates a good property management office from a not so good one?
Yeah, okay. I think it comes back to that same thing. What I would do, as a really good example for your listeners out there, if you want to find a good property management business, I would look at their marketing. Have a look at how they market properties, because the better your rental property is being marketed, the higher quality tenant that they're trying to attract for you. Right? So, if they're doing video marketing, if they're doing professional photography, floor plans, if they're doing the top-notch stuff. Now, yes, it's all shiny, but they understand the depths of how to attract the better quality tenants. Just because a property manager may say, we can get you $1,000 a week, it doesn't mean the higher the rent doesn't mean that they're the right agency for you. The right agency will give you the real facts. So it's not necessarily about how much you can get each week, because it might sit vacant for 5 weeks, so you could achieve it, So make sure that you don't look at that, but look at their social media, look at their Google reviews, because the tenants, they're the ones writing the reviews. Do you want and the landlords and the tradespeople, have a look at those reviews. It's really, really important. We often find that if anyone has less than 40 reviews and it's under 4 stars, they need training.
Yeah.
So those bad agencies, they don't care how properties are marketed. They just think you can put it online and a tenant will come. Well, we're all about teaching our clients attract the best quality tenant in the shortest period of time.
Yeah, it's funny. Sort of used to observe what Sonia and her team used to do, and it's interesting how if the team were fussy up front about the quality of the landlord and the quality of the property, then the quality of the tenant would normally flow out the back end. So, a good landlord normally invests in a good property which attracts good tenants. On the flip side of that, a money-hungry, penny-pinching landlord would generally buy an average property which would attract average tenants. And has that been your experience, mate?
Yeah, it certainly is. And on that, so, it's interesting you say that the penny pinching. If you were to call a real estate office up, or any of the listeners were to call an office up, and let's say their fees were 10%, right? That's just a figure I've thrown out. And that landlord would say, well, hang on a minute, the agency down the road's offered me 8. If that property manager says, look, I'll match it, they're not a good negotiator. How do you think? That doesn't mean go with them because they've just dropped their fees, right? To help the penny pinching landlord. Don't you want that agency that knows how to negotiate? So if that agent then negotiated and said, well, look, this is why we charge the fee, because of this, and this. How do you think the negotiation skills are going to be for the agent who dropped their fees when the tenant rings up and says they can't pay the rent? By the way, I've got 5 dogs. By the way, I've got 6 cars. Can I, and the agent rings up and says, I'm coming for a routine inspection, and the tenant says, no, I'm sick. You need that agency that knows how to negotiate. And most of the time, the cheap investments also attract the lower grade quality of tenant that may necessarily not be the most ideal that can afford to pay the rent. So always speak to a property manager before you buy an investment, and they'll let you know if they're happy to manage that property on your behalf as well.
Exactly right, and that's made a couple of brilliant points there, mate. Getting the most important person that we talk to, because we sort of help facilitate investors to build their A-team, and the property manager is the key player both right at the start, because they're going to tell you what type of properties are letting well and selling well, because they've got no interest in selling, so they'll give you the truth rather than what some of the agents like to do is blow smoke up your backside. Yep. So you get a real handle on what's working, what doesn't, as a precursor, and then if they're any good, once you do secure the property, then they're the best team member you've got to make that process as smooth as it possibly can long term. Interesting your commentary around the rates as well, because unfortunately, and it's a bit like home loans, most investors focus on one thing, and that's how much you're going to charge me. And talking about my good wife Sonia's experience, her team used to charge 11%, and would stand by that, because the difference between 11% and 8% was on most properties in Adelaide was a cup of coffee a week.
Yep.
So she used to say to people, "Are you prepared to put your property at risk for the cost of a cup of coffee?"
It's interesting you say that, Bushy, because it's the biggest investment that we've got is our property, right? And we're basing a decision on coffee, I look and I'm the same. There's other real estate consultants out there, and they know what I charge per day, as I know what they charge per day, but they continue to charge a lower fee because they can't provide the service and get the results like I do as a coach, mentor, and keynote speaker.
Yeah.
Property management is the same. Everyone knows what everyone charges, but they continue to charge cheap because they can't provide the same level of service. You do not want to base your decision on a cup of coffee. You could get the best agency out there that could lease your property 10 days quicker. That's potentially $700 extra income in your pocket a year. And 1% in a home loan is thousands and thousands of dollars a year. 1% in property management is a couple of bucks.
Exactly.
A big difference.
Yeah, massive difference. So sort of breaking it down from the property management office level to the individual property manager level, what do you think separates a good property manager from an average one?
One that rings and really cares and is empathetic for the owner as well, and they have interest in the tenant. It's really important, the relationship, that you pick a property manager that's got the relationship between the tenant, the property, the tradesperson and the owner, because it's right across the board. If you find a property manager that is solely only focused on the owner, the landlord, then it's not going to work, because then you're going to get personality clashes with the tenants, and you'll get a high turnover of tenants as well. And you do not want that. You want to find someone that's got good longevity tenancies as well. Really important to look for.
Yeah, no, very good point. So as an existing or aspiring landlord, what questions do you believe they need to ask to get the best property manager to suit them?
What continued development do you do to ensure that your standards are up to date and the best for my property? If they only can say we are part of a franchise, then they're just saying the same as everyone else. You want to find someone that's, does listen to audibles, that does continue training, that attends conferences and events. These are questions that you want to ask. Are they part of, continued development, self-development courses as well? Bushy, I've got 4 coaches.
Yeah.
I've got 4 coaches myself. I'm a coach, right? I travel to America and I go to social media marketing world. That I've got a Facebook coach, I've got an Instagram coach, I've got a funnels coach. We have to keep continued development. So make sure that you've got somebody that does continued development. Bushy, the Australian cricket team, we just won the 2020 World Cup. How many coaches are part of the Australian cricket team? And they're the best players in the world. Right?
That's a really good analogy, mate. Absolutely spot on. Mate, I read a great blog that yourself and your partners did on IGT around some of the tough love things that property managers need to say to landlords to educate them. And I thought there's some real gold in that, because it really sets expectations and the education piece right from the get-go. Are you able to recount some of those key things for the benefit of the listeners?
You're asking about an article that Darren Hunter, my business partner, wrote now.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot, mate. Are there any sort of tough love things that you think property managers need to be saying to their landlords so that they set the relationship right from the get-go?
Absolutely. A good property manager needs to be educating an owner to put a rent reduction in place when the property is vacant, because there's 3 reasons why a property isn't renting. It's either not marketed well, so it's not presented well online, it's not presented well face-to-face, or it's price. It's the 3 Ps, right? So when a property manager rings up, they're not just saying drop the rent so it makes their job easier. Their job is to get as much rent as they can for you, because they earn more money as well. So it's actually listening to, that tough love about putting a reduction in place. Another tough question is, sometimes you might have a really nice couple, or they've just had a baby. If a rent increase is due, do it. Listen to your property manager when it comes, because later, if you are looking to sell and you're $50 a week under rent, Bushy, how much money are they missing out on in potentially selling that property because it's under rented? Because investors look at the return on investment. Keeping maintenance up on properties as well, because tenants, tough love, a lot of landlords, they might, don't worry about that, don't worry about that. For a tenant, when they're paying rent, they feel it's their castle. That home is their castle. If the toilet seat, for example, is not working properly, it's not staying up, or it bangs or whatever, that annoys them, and that gives them enough reason to want to move out.
Yeah.
So the tough love in listening to your property manager is only they will have the owner's best interest at heart.
Yeah, extremely well said there, mate. One of the sort of growing industry issues that's happening is, sort of illicit drug production in residential properties. And I know it's something that you and the IG team have spoken about also a bit in the past.
Lots of times.
Yeah, what are some of the warning signs that both landlords and property managers need to look out for that would give them an indication that might be something they have to contend with.
Yeah, with some of the solar panels that are going onto the roofs these days, that it's easier to recognise if the electricity bill's going through the roof. So that's an easy one to tell, because if there is a plan on it, it stays in the owner's name as well. So those things can be recognised.
Yeah.
They can set up a drug lag in a property within 4 weeks now. It's exceptionally quick how technology has worked. That's when it comes back to having a really good property manager that does the right background checks. Because, when an application for a rental property is completed, it's just as much work as applying for a home loan. And the right property manager will call those personal references, will make sure that those people own the properties, as I said, because they've got the right technology in place. Yeah. Thankfully, I've got to say that I haven't had any of my clients that we're training lately, and this is in all countries, go through that drug issue, because we teach them to be really strict on those tenancy processes. We're actually writing a new course on leasing as we speak, would you believe?
Yeah.
It's such an important factor. Make sure that your property manager is doing regular routine inspections as well.
Yes, that's a very good point. It's something that's quite variable in my own experience, and variable in terms of frequency, but variable in terms of the quality of the actual inspections themselves. So very keen piece there. Now, in terms of the one of the qualities that, again, this is just observing, looking at what my good wife Sonia and her team experienced over the decade or more that she was running that business. One of the qualities that she always looked for was resilience and longevity in a property managers, because that's they're dealing with conflict every day of the week. How do landlords find out the resilience of property managers they're looking to engage, do you think? You got any thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a really good question, actually, because longevity of staff is a tough one. And through the pandemic, the pressure on property managers has gone through the roof because, obviously a lot of owners, we were all stressed that were our tenants going to pay their rent. Who did they call? They didn't call the tenant, they called the property manager.
Yeah.
And they were demanding what's going on. So the turnover, it did increase, sadly. But those companies that have got the right culture within their company, culture starts at the top. You said it earlier, Bushy, about property managers being the poor brother or sister thrown in the back of the room. The companies where the principals, the directors, have got a good influence into the property management department have done really well.
Yeah.
They've kept their staff. Those companies that have continued training, those companies that go to regular conferences and have the regular meetings have kept that resilience up, and they prepare them for that conflict management, should we say. That we have courses on conflict management because some of the stress that owners, property managers have to go through is quite intense. Landlords go through breakups. That puts pressure on the sale of properties and who's going to be, responsible for the property, and then the tenants are having breakups. The property manager is the middle person dealing with both.
Exactly. It is a constant conflict management. There's no doubt about it. And there's only a certain type of person who actually enjoys that process. In my own experience, I mean, I made the mistake of looking after Sonia's business for a week when she went to a conference in Melbourne years ago, and I lasted a week in the chair. Dennis, and I said, "You can have it back." Because every call was managing some sort of conflict in one fashion or another. And compared to that, the finance side of the equation that we run is a piece of cake, Dennis. So I fully admire and respect good property managers are rare and great people, because if they've got that level of care when they're handling that level of conflict on a consistent basis, they're a quality human being, mate.
Yeah, empathy certainly needed in property management, as well as being, quite strict at the same time. It's adapting that we spoke about earlier. Bushy, look, I was never a property manager managing properties when I
Yeah.
worked in the industry, and some of the stress I used to see the girls getting yelled at. And I actually taught them, if someone starts to raise their voice and yell at you, you need to say, stop. I don't deserve for you to be raising your voice like this. When you calm down, call me back, and I'd teach them to hang up.
Yeah.
And that was really hard for them to do because they didn't want to upset them. And I said, well, hang on a minute. You're a human being. You're just the person in the middle here. You know, they would have neighbours ringing up about a fence dispute or a dog barking. There's so much that's involved. And again, it comes back to that continued training. Bushie, a quick tip. Don't always, for your the listeners out there, if they're going to pick a property manager, if they call an agency and they say, we've got 65 years experience, that's not telling you it's good experience. That's not telling you that they haven't been to the tribunal 15 times in the last 12 months, right? So, dig a little bit deeper. Don't just listen to how many years experience they've had. I mean, I've had, 2008 is when I started in real estate. I've had over 13 years experience, but it doesn't mean I would have been a good property manager. I would have failed. I'm happy to say that. I was very good at educating owners in how to prepare their homes for rent and the expectations of rents as well.
Yeah, no, very good commentary. Sort of around the subject around property managers, and what are the biggest mistakes that you see property managers make then in your experience?
Look, one of those things about real estate and property management is you can't sweep things under the carpet. You know, one of the biggest mistakes is that communication. You know, we spoke about it early. There's no emails in fruit. A lot of property managers, and I shouldn't say a lot, there still are property managers out there that will email a request, whether it's asking an owner for, to get maintenance done instead of picking up the phone, or they email the tenant asking for things instead of picking up the phone. You know, communication's possibly the biggest mistake that I see, not being able to educate an owner on why it's important to get that reduction or why it's important to get the maintenance done, or educating the tenant why they can't have that third dog, or why the daughter's boyfriend can't move into a property. You know, communication is the key.
Yeah, no, brilliantly said. Now, there's various ways that property management officers set themselves up structurally. And, there's a pod, there's a portfolio, and then there's hybrids between the two.
Yep.
For the benefit of the listeners, I'd love you to talk through, a quick description of what each of those looks like, and then some of the pros and cons of those various team structures.
Yeah, sure. So you do get you're talking about pods, etc. So just to give everyone a bit of an explanation, typically speaking in a real estate office, just for property management sales, they do a great job of selling property, but they're not experienced of what rents are, demands for, properties, etc. when it comes to the rental side. When a property is listed, they need a BDM. They need that, whether the listing agent is the person that explains and educates the owner on the best rents, the best way to prepare the property, etc. That person is normally specifically designed for that, and they'll do a very, very good job at it.
Yep.
It's like a salesperson in a car yard. They're the sales agent, but the mechanic is the one that understands the structures of the the mechanical side of it.
Yep.
The mechanic wouldn't be a good salesperson. The salesperson wouldn't be a good mechanic.
Yeah.
So, so you've got your listing agent that's very experienced with that. Then you've got your a leasing agent. So that's the person that finds the tenant. They are normally really experienced at finding a tenant, and that's specifically their job. That's their expertise. They can read if a tenant's good. They do the right background checks. Then you've got your property manager who looks after the property, manages the tenant, manages the property, has the relationship with the owner, and they're typically the same person that may do the routine inspections, and they prepare the home for vacate. Now, sometimes, and it does happen, you can have one person that does it all, right? They can, and you can find a small agency. There might be two people sharing the roles. typically I find the best agencies are the ones that have the expert in each field.
Yeah.
You know, they have those experts in each field because you want the best person acting for you within the process of your property being managed.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think where, and particularly with those very different skill sets around the leasing and the listing side of the equation, makes absolute sense and allows, as you say, the mechanic in terms of the property manager to focus on the actual specific property itself. Love your thoughts around this though, because, and again, this is an experience, a bad experience really that we had with our properties in the US, where the property management agency also had someone who just did inspections, someone who just did maintenance. And the biggest challenge we had there, Dennis, was because things fell through the cracks and we didn't know who to talk to, and we were getting different answers from different parties, and it left us very confused and very uncertain around where things were heading. What's your views around that sort of specialisation at that level?
Yeah, well, you can have that in Australia, and it does work very well. But the good thing about that is because technology in Australia is very advanced. For example, there's a company called Inspection Manager, and their routine inspections are videoed. So it's all video, it's all through an app. You know, that's automatically set into the system that the current company would be using.
Yeah.
So it's all, you know, we are so transparent in real estate within Australia. It's a lot easier. There are inspection people that just specifically do inspections, and that data is inputted straight into the program. So they could have just left the property, and an owner may ring up, and then the access and the information is there visually for them to see. Technology is even getting to the point where the owner is going to be able to be part of that routine inspection through the app live. That's where we're going. Other countries aren't even at that point yet. So I'm okay with it for Australia because we are so advanced in our technology and systems here.
Yeah, I agree. It's first-hand example there. We just recently helped a investor to secure a property in northern Queensland, and one of the things we did was to get the best local property manager we could find to do a live Zoom walkthrough of the property. This is prior to purchase, to get a really good sense of the good, bad, and the ugly. And then using that property manager's expertise of the local area to really pinpoint whether that property was appropriate. So I agree with you, and the potential purchase was involved in that, and very eye-opening. And as you say, the importance of the property manager experience there really came to the fore in helping us make an informed decision of whether that property was actually appropriate for what they were trying to achieve.
Yeah, so just on that, I was the one that started the training. That's called Investor Support Services, and that's what I did as a real estate agent in Narra, New South Wales, and now I've been training that since 2013, where the property managers highly get involved in doing pre-settlement inspections on behalf of the purchaser. Never get the sales agent to do it because their best interest is just selling the house. Property manager is there to protect the owner, the purchaser. So Investor Support Services is a great tool that I teach property managers what to do in assisting people in buying property. So, and I used to do it to, there was no Zoom, there was no FaceTime, when I was a real estate agent. So I used to record it on my phone, upload it to a private YouTube channel and send it to the owner.
The shifts in technology have been absolutely amazing. And talking about disruption and change, you've mentioned it a couple of times during your chat already, but the sort of COVID catalyst has really disrupted the industry, and I think in a lot of ways in a very positive way. What's your read of the impact it's had, what we've learned, and what the future holds for property management as a result?
Oh, look, I think property management is on the rise even more. There's less investors potentially buying right now at the moment in due to such high increases in properties. It's interesting because there's some states and cities where there's a high demand for investments because everyone's moving there. Which is crazy. For example, right where I live, in Brisbane, it's I've been speaking to some sales agents last week, and they're saying that 95% of the purchasers at home are looking to move into it, owner occupiers, which is crazy when it's normally around 30%. And you probably know that stat a bit better than me.
Totally.
Yeah, they've got investors waiting. I've got an agency in Adelaide I train. He said, Dennis, I've got investors waiting to buy. There's no stock. It's crazy because most of the time an investor won't buy an emotion, and they're looking at the numbers. So they're slowing down in Sydney, they're slowing down in Melbourne and Brisbane at the moment. But it's just meaning because there's less stock that property managers have to raise the bar of standard. So it's only better for Australian investors.
Yeah, absolutely agree, mate. Brilliant, mate. Well, that's been a really good coverage of the importance of property management and just how integral and central it is to the success of investors moving forward. What I'd love to do now is switch into what I affectionately refer to as the ambush bushfire lightning round, which are just the quick, fast 5 questions that you normally always get asked on podcasts. And first of those, mate, to share your words of wisdom on is, what's your favourite quote and why? And you can give us more than one if you want to.
Yeah, sure. I already shared one earlier by Steve Harvey was, if you want to kill a big dream, tell it to small-minded people. That one speaks minds because, I had a lot of family and friends that told me I could never do real estate. Then they told me I should stick to real estate and not become a trainer, So if I listened to those people, they would have become my reality, which is my other favourite quote: never allow other people's opinions to become your reality. I continually strive to better my life for my children. I've always got my goals, my visions. I'm teaching them to buy investment properties and move forward in their lives. So other people say things because they're happy in their comfort zone. They don't know your dreams, your desires, and your goals. If you've got them, set your eyes on them. As an example, if you and I were walking down the street and all of a sudden you said, Dennis, you know what? I'm hungry. You're not looking at the shoe shops, the sports shops, the bars or anything anymore. Your senses of your smell are starting to focus on what food can I eat. And all of a sudden you might see the restaurant, the cafe, or the KFC, the McDonald's, whatever you want to eat. That's where your focus goes. And our focus needs to continually stay focused on our own self-development and our goals, not other people. It's fine to talk to people, bounce things off ideas, but before you do, if you're going to ask someone for an opinion, would you allow that person to make life decisions on your behalf? So to me, it's, I don't listen to small-minded people, and I don't mean that in, I'm a very humble person. I'm never the smartest person in the room. How's that?
I love that. There's some absolute gold there, mate. And I love what you said there about would you allow that person to make decisions on your behalf? That's a really good question to constantly have in the back of your mind when you're looking to get people to assist you in some manner or another, mate. That's absolute gold. Let's flick to the literary world then for a minute. What's the top book that you'd recommend listeners read and why?
Oh, I love this. My favourite book that I've read quite a few sales-based ones, etc., but never lose a customer again. This one is for every single industry. It's by Joey Coleman. I listened to this book on Audible because I'm all about listening at every opportunity that I can. And that one absolutely opened my mind. He gave insights into the growth of Netflix and dentist industries, and it's really interesting. It's a great book. I highly recommend. Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman.
Yeah, a cracker that would be applicable to everyone and every situation, I would have thought there, Dennis. Now, this one's a little bit left field and changing direction a little bit, but what's the top legal thing that you've done to minimise the tax that you pay, Dennis?
I pay a higher fee for the best available accountant that I can because this accountant looks for funds to help my business in taking my business to new levels and gives me advice on funds for me to educate other business owners on when employing new people. You know, there's so many great avenues out there. For example, I was in, when I was travelling to Adelaide a few weeks ago, my accountant advised me that there's actually a fund going around. If you started a business in March, you can get B&I paid for you for the first 12 months, government funding. That is an amazing tip from my accountant that I can give my clients, which makes me look like the market expert to help grow my business.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, exactly right. A great accountant is absolutely worth their gold. Switching back to the investment advice area for a minute then, what's both the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've ever received to date?
The best piece of advice was from my dad in never look to buy the best house in a street.
Yeah.
You know, because that one is always going to be the one that you're going to improve because you naturally live in the property. Yeah. And, you know, you will eventually do it up. And, you know, again, it's about that capital investment. The worst piece of advice was go to the lowest bank fee. You know, look for the bank who offers the cheapest fee. You know, the customer service is absolutely shocking. Yeah. You know, I know that's not really based on property, but it still is. Totally. You know, it's all about customer service.
Yeah,
you've got to go with a trusted person that you can trust that won't necessarily look for the cheapest thing for you, but the best to suit your environment, your family and client.
Yeah, beautifully said. Now, back on the personal front, what's a happy habit or rewarding ritual or a daily discipline that you've embraced that contributes most to your investment success today, Deniz?
My mental health is something that's really, really important. Sadly, it's not spoken about enough, but doesn't matter what situation I'm in, I'll get up, I'll go for a walk, I'll go to the gym, and I work on my self-development personally that way as well. And to top it off, connecting with my children. Yeah. Having a depth conversation with them all at least once or twice a week.
Yeah, love it. Love it, mate. Great advice. Final question, mate, that sort of gives us an opportunity to sort of wrap up the key messages that you believe are important, and it's a big global question. If I gave you a microphone that spoke to every single one of the 7.7 billion odd people that are currently alive in the world, and I gave you a minute to talk, what would you suggest they invest in?
Oh, well, this one's pretty easy. It's investing time with your family, because if we're ever on our deathbed, we're never going to wish we spent another 5 minutes at work. We're going to be wishing that we spent that good quality time with those people that are the ones that have always supported us, looked after us, and had our backs. You know, we bring children into our lives, not just so we can say we're kids, but because so we can mentor them and you know, put the best foot forward for them. So spending more time with quality time, being present.
Yeah, beautifully said, mate. Now, as we bring it to a close, you mentioned earlier in our conversation that you've recently published and released a book. What is the book, and where can listeners grab a copy of it, Deniz?
So the book is pmleadsecrets.com. So pmleadsecrets.com. You can just Google my name and find it as well. So we've posted the book out now to 15 countries. Mexico came onto the equation, so we're pretty happy about that one. It's apparently I would have been an Australian #1 seller if I put it on Amazon, but I didn't. So we've sold over 1,100 books, which I'm just still pinching myself because fruit and veggies is my background. Can I just say, I can get to the position where I'm at, anyone can. You know, so be encouraged by that. And I'm very approachable. pmleadsecrets.com.
Yeah, beautiful. And for those listeners who are property managers or other in the industry that can see some real merits on getting you on board to mentor, train and educate them on how to do things better for the sake of their landlords and their business, How do they do that, Dennis?
Oh, look, they can contact me. I can ask an anonymous question into an area. You know, we are training, and I've got a network of agents all over the world. Doesn't matter where your property is, and if I don't know someone in that area, I'm more than happy to help them as well. So if people do want to reach out and they want mentoring in coaching, you can just go to our website, inspiredgrowthtraining.com, and just click contact myself, and I'll personally give you a call.
Yeah, love it, mate. Look, always great to chat to you, Dennis. You've got great energy, and you can continue to contribute great things to the industry. Really appreciate you taking your time today to spend that with us, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bushy, again for having me on here. Big hello to Sonia for me, and to all of your listeners for listening in this bar. Thank you.
Good on you, mate. Talk soon. Thanks, Dennis. To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's hello@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die